Welcome back to another edition of the Gabagools podcast, episode 22. With me, as always, the Cuzzo Dan. How we feeling?
We're feeling light, we're feeling right, and I'll tell you, we're starting this a few minutes later than we normally do. I had to finish up my jazzercise class this morning, so you know, finish that up. We're feeling good. We're feeling limber for the pod. Also, call me Dan Skilling, Tom Skilling, whatever you want. Today, not a good day if you are a gringo in the Midwest. 85 to 90. It's 85 right now. It's humid. Just not good. Rained last night. Rained more today. Um, and I am supposed to be going to see fireworks later today. So I'll tell you right now, looking forward to it, but not as much as I should be because this Whitey is going to be it's going to be a pool.
And it's supposed to storm again later, too. I don't know what time, but I know it's supposed to storm. Yeah, last night, I don't know how, if you heard any of the thunder last night or just sleep through it, but man, my house was shaking like multiple times. I heard the clouds just going over, and I had that thought. I'm like, man, Thor's pissed off about something right now.
Yeah, no, I mean it's supposed to cool it off after it rains, but when it's 90 the next day and the humidity, it's just like fucking. Oh, that's one already. It's
Yeah.
uh, it's no bueno, as we like to say in this household.
Yeah, I was at the Cougars game last night, and when we first got to the gates, it was like real dark, and we were like, like the wind picked up, and we're hauling ass, and obviously they had us all sit on the concourse, which is fine because there's beer on the concourse. It was a quick. They had the tarp on, just rained, real quickly, quick moving, summer storm, and just it was gone by the time. It was time to play ball and nice little sunny, and then it cooled off real nice, so wasn't too hot.
Now you got to see them roll the tarp out and do all that.
Yeah,
Now, how was that? Were they pretty good? Were they better than like an MLB crew? What do we think here?
I mean it was solid. It wasn't sloppy at all, but it was a bunch of you could tell like high school, college students, and maybe like a couple older people that just do it. But yeah, it was kind of interesting to see.
I mean, there's kind of a science to getting the tarp out there quickly, efficiently, and every now and then you see those videos of the guy who slips and then he falls under there, and you're like, oh no! I
Nope,
mean, he's
it just
lost forever.
disappears. Yeah, it disappeared, and they always say that too. They always caption, "Oh, he disappeared." It's like he's right under there. But yeah, those are always fun to watch too. But yeah, more storms coming. So hopefully you get your fireworks in then by that point.
I guess we'll see. Only time will tell.
Exactly. So obviously, because we're in the off season of a lot of sports here, we're gonna touch on another, our top four or Mount Rushmore. We still haven't really decided. I don't know if I want to do Mount Rushmore because a lot of bigger podcasts use that one. So we'll do our top four, and then when we come up with a creative name for it, we'll drop that. But today is going to be our top four sports dynasties. So, this could be any type of range, and this is obviously our own opinion on them. So, since I let you go last week, I'm going to take off and go first this week. And yeah, I'm going to be a little pushy today. Uh,
Heyo!
and I'm going to go with the. Who do I start off with? I mean,
Drum roll, please.
we're going to go with your Chicago Bulls, or our Chicago Bulls. The 90s ones. Obviously, they got the six titles over an 8-year span, three back to back to back. And you have to mention the greatest player of all time with Michael Jordan, especially during that era. You know, what do you what do
Oh,
you
I
think
mean,
about
MJ, I mean, my goodness, obviously he's just a few years before you and I because we're a couple of young, hot studs. But, you know, um, how can you not have, when you talk about dynasties, when you talk about a run of, championships in, a certain amount of years, how can you not have them in there as one of your top few? I mean, just the way that he willed, and obviously not just Jordan, but you had Phil Jackson, legendary head coach there too. Scottie Pippen is one of the best, if not the best, Robin, if you will, Batman and Robin.
Don't
That's
tell
ever
him that
really.
though.
No, I'm sorry, Scotty, but no, I mean, 6 and 8 years. Obviously, Jordan took those 2 years off in between. People say, "Oh, they would have had eight." Well, they might have.
I think
Um,
they would have, to be honest with you. The way that they were on that run, I don't think there was another team that was going to beat them. I mean, who knows? With Hakeem and up the middle, I don't know how strong the defense would have been. I mean, you still had Horace Grant at that point until he left for Orlando, which was kind of a spit in the face at that point. But they went out and got Dennis Rodman, so Dynasty started right back up after that, and Steve Kerr, some of those big names that you see, and then obviously they have all the documentaries out there and books, and obviously you have The Last Dance. That was a good one. Basically highlighted Jordan and made all the rest of the guys kind of look a little bad. So I wouldn't be shocked if they come out with another documentary or docu-series in the next 5 years, kind of trying to redeem what the other players' point of views on it.
I want to see them come out since you mentioned that. I want to see the part two of The Last Dance, a 6-part episode, just like the first one. I think it was 6 parts of
So
Michael and the guy who they were playing. They had thrown that quarter across the wall or whatever. That's what I want to see. That guy,
yeah,
he was. I mean, that was one of my favorite parts of that. I mean, that guy was awesome.
yeah, no, that was a good series too. I enjoyed that. But yeah, got to go with the Bulls. Got to take the homer pick. I really hate it because I have a feeling I'm going to take a lot of the homer picks here. But I'll pass it over to you. What do you got for your number one?
All right, so you mentioned this a little while ago, and I looked at it a couple different ways, but um, I went with, at least for one of my top couple sports dynasties, I had to go with the UConn Huskies women's college basketball. When you start to dive in and look at
Oh
some of the
yeah,
records and the things that they did and set, it's unfathomable
wow.
to. Yeah, it's a big word
Yes.
for me at one.
Yeah, you spent a lot of time jazzercising. You might have needed to do.
Unfathomable.
What do you call them? What do you call like the actors who do the
The
word
speech
verbiage?
exercises or
Yes,
whatever.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. You didn't do your speech exercises, but we'll get
Unique
back on
New
track.
York.
Unique New York. I'm even worse, but go all right. Go back. So we got UConn women's basketball. Gino
so
Auriemma.
so from '08 to 22 appeared in 14 consecutive Final Fours. That to me is just like, okay, that's you want to talk about greatness. That's greatness. Owns the two longest winning streaks, men's or women's, in college basketball history. 111 straight wins started at Creighton, November 2014, ended on March 31st, 2017, at a buzzer beater at the end of overtime to cause them to lose their first game.
And
Um,
who beat them? Do you have that?
I believe it was Mississippi State.
It
So
was. Yep.
66-64. I'll tell you, what a game, what a loss for the UConn team. Second streak of 90 consecutive wins, including two undefeated seasons from 08-09 and 09 to 10. They also own a 126 regular season game streak, which I believe is the longest in college history. And you just start to look at some of that stuff. You know, women's sports don't usually get very much play or run or whatever you want to use. But when you start talking about the best of the best, that team, that franchise, I know obviously a lot of different players came through there over the years, but what they had over there is something that we may never see again for that long of a run.
Yeah, and not even, and you hit it on the head with this pick too. I really enjoyed it because you hit 2008 through that basically until kind of recently. They had a run of championships. So this starts back in '95 when Gino. I mean, I don't know how long Gino was there, but he got his first championship in '95, and then 2000 again. But then they had 2002, 2003, 2004. They take a little break in between. Then they just get back on that horse and they go 2009, 2010, 2013 through 2016 of just championships. Like you said, these streaks are, probably never going to be touched again. Maybe South Carolina, the way that they like their coach, Coach Staley, I think her name is, also an incredible coach, could be someone that could potentially have that type of run, but they just don't have the championship currently to be up there. But don't sleep on them. But yeah, UConn women's basketball, they might be the front runners this year with Paige Beckers again. To kind of get out, this is her senior year. As she came back, she wants to win. So, she'll be the projected number one overall pick. So,
Yeah, I mean that's you look at that run, and to me, I just don't see any team being able to. I mean, 111 straight wins. And some of those streaks, they didn't lose for a couple years in a row. I mean, to me, that some of that stuff's just never going to be touched. I mean, what they did those the last couple few decades. I mean, we'll never see that again.
no. And, speaking of that, and I'm not going to take away from it, but if we're talking about winning streaks too, some of the great teams, you could go. I'm not even going to do it. I'll save it for my pick. I'll let you go with yours. I'm going to hold off. I got to pull off the thrusters because I might actually,
Pull off the
change this
thrusters.
team into my Mount Rushmore now because I kind of talked myself into it in my brain right here. Brain was working. But all right, on your turn, on the snake turn here, what do you got for your number two team?
Snaky snake. All right. Well, I guess this is probably one of the next easiest ones. Got to go with the Yankees. 27-time World Series champs. 16 more than the Cardinals with 11, who have the second most. They have 23 numbers retired, which is freaking unbelievable. They have four in a row. I think they won four in a row, excuse me, from 36 to 39. So those old school Yankee teams, as we know. Five in a row from 49 to 53. 40 AL pennants, 20 AL division titles, more titles than any other franchise in four major North American sports leagues. So there's something for you. 44 players and 11 managers inducted to the Hall. The list goes on with the all-time greats from this franchise. They're used to they're the epitome of excellence. If they don't win the World Series every year, it's a failure essentially for them because of all the success they've had. And there really isn't a team that's anywhere near as accomplished as them in Major League Baseball. So when you talk about greatness, when you talk about the best of the best, superior, what did Michael say to Dwight? Michael's goodbye when he wrote Dwight the recommendation. I think he called him supreme. He called
Yeah,
him supreme, or he said a couple things like that. That's what you get when you talk about the Yankees. Whether you like them or not,
yeah, I got to give
they're
them
unreal.
they earn their own pinstripes. That's what you could say about them is that they're one of the teams that has always just been there, and unfortunately we kind of have to live with them that they're a thorn in our side. And unfortunately, Boston did have that run probably from 2004 up until 2013, and then they won in 18 too. But they kind of like really took a beating to the Yankees for a number of years, which is great to see, obviously, because we all, I hate the Yankees. A bunch of, as I call them, a bunch of Gabagools, with their, backwards hats, their gold chains, their open Yankees jersey with their white T-shirt under it, and usually a couple stains on the shirt if you really want it. But the chains is what it is. Yeah,
Well, you got a few stains on the shirts, but I think you're forgetting that you're probably getting some mustard on those big chains too.
right. And my favorite though is those jerseys that we're talking about probably have a name on the back of them. And any Yankees jersey, they don't have names on them. You know that. At least you should. Everyone knows. So you don't want to be that guy.
You don't want to be that guy. So yeah, you got to go with the Yankees there at a very strong. If they're my number two pick, that's quite the number two. They're probably. I mean, I'm not even going to get into who's one or two between my two picks. That's for another
Yep.
pod. But those are my top couple.
All right. So speaking on the, I guess I'll do a college team here, and I really wanted to go with a different team that I kind of talked myself out of, but you got to go with Alabama football from 2009 through 2023. They had 129 draft picks, which has been the most I think in college football in the NFL draft. 67 of those were in the first two rounds. So you're talking about every year pretty much since then, Nick Saban filtered out top talent year in and year out. And you kind of know a lot of these names, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, all those running backs, Najee Harris now, just year in and year out, you have all these guys. Josh Jacobs, you don't even really remember he played at Alabama. He's one of the top running backs too. So, you go through the runs. They won in 2009, 2011, went back to back in 11 to 12. Had a 2 or 3 year break. They won in 2015, 2017, and in 2020. So pretty much every era they've kind of won. And just having that, program be like I don't even have words for it. That the model franchise is kind of what Alabama football is. My honorable mention would have been the USC Trojans from 2003 through 2005, just because they did go on because you were talking about winning streaks. They went on a 34 game winning streak from 2003 through 2005. And they did vacate a couple of those wins, so that's why they're not as prominent anymore. But I think they did get those wins back, as far as I know, because I think they're starting to. Because Reggie Bush got his
I was going to
Heisman back.
say,
He got
yeah,
his Heisman back finally, so that was
they
good.
should have got. I mean, they should have never taken the Heisman from him. I mean, that was obviously that was criminal.
And the death penalty. I'm a Trojans fan too, so the death penalty that team got with scholarships, not being able to go to bowls for like 2 years,
Hmm.
and then the scholarships that lasted like a 5 year span was just criminal. When you had Ohio State have their issues, Penn State had their issues, and it seemed like they got a slap on the wrist compared to Reggie Bush getting a house for his mom. So, um, but yeah, getting go on.
No, I was going to say, yeah, that that's a good way to put it. A little slap on the wrist for those other two, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
honestly, if you look back, those teams never got they didn't have the penalty that USC got, but that's because the sun doesn't set on USC, as you've heard me say multiple times. Um, going back on track with our Bama though, just incredible run. Just championship after championship they were making too. That was the thing, is it wasn't like they only had a couple championships and it was sporadic. They made it to the national title game in like multiple seasons in a row, whether they won or not. Um, you know, you just can't. It's hard to compare teams like that. You know, like I at least for football.
yeah. I mean, well, you talk about Alabama's run. That's another great pick, especially with, like you said, I didn't realize how many guys had been drafted. You knew the number was high with
Right.
Alabama being as good as they were, and it seemed like up until I don't know 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a few more years back, that it was pretty much Alabama's to win year in and year out. Then Clemson stepped up and won a couple, and we've seen Georgia win a couple. But it really, for college football, it really is up to those top couple teams. And just talking about college football for just a quick sec, I think this is the first year that they're changing the playoff format. So now we've got 12 teams in the
Yep.
playoffs
So
now. So that's going to be really interesting now. Your
it's
thoughts
going to
on
be a
that
lot of
just for a
fun.
moment?
Oh yeah, no, I'm super excited about that. That's something that I've been waiting for. I actually hated the BCS era because it was only two teams, and it's hard to judge it when you have because then it falls on strength of schedule. Which at that point you look at like Alabama, they play in the SEC. That's typical, better talent. You have LSU, you had Auburn. A lot of these teams were year in and year out one loss teams. They usually
Yeah.
lost to each other. with that being expanded finally to 12 teams, we're really going to have a hell of a playoff. A lot of these top teams. I'm not 100% sure on, what the format is. It's like, okay, if you won the SEC, you make it. The one the Big Ten, are we having MAC teams in there? Are we going to see like an NIU if they, probably not NIU, but sorry, Rich. If you have like your Western Michigans or Eastern Michigan State, whoever it is making it to the playoff, are they actually like, if they went undefeated and, in the MAC, are they making it? That's going to be, I do see it still staying pretty high with the SEC, especially with Texas and Oklahoma moving over. But what the Big Ten did is they grabbed four major teams out of the Pac 12, RIP Pac 12. It's hit Pac 2 now. They took Oregon, they took Washington, they took SC, and then they took UCLA. So you got your West Coast teams and you threw them in there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting though, going from what was it? It was like four teams, the top four that made it, and now you're tripling that to 12. I mean, depending on who makes it, you're still going to have a lot of these teams because that's the one of the toughest things with this format. What for all these years was you got to pick between all these teams that have one loss, and now you're going to have a bunch of teams in there that people are going to be complaining now. Oh, well, this team should have been in there. Well, now we've got this year where you're adding eight more teams, so you're going to have a lot more of those teams. And the other interesting thing is, you're still going to have strength of schedule. So is there going to be a team that can squeak in with two losses? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
I
think
mean,
I think we will. I think we're going to
you
start
might.
like the Oklahomas who might lose to Bama and Auburn. They might slide in there. Now, it's going to be one of those things. Notre Dame now is actually going to make it. Now, how far they make it, that's to be seen. But they'll play that top talent. Fuck Notre Dame, by the way. But back on Bama once again, getting back on track here. Just the 4-year run too from 2015 through 2018, they made the national championship all 4 years. They won two of them. So they would have had a four-peat. But that college football is coming back very soon. Tomorrow is actually a big day, and I know if you've listened to some past podcasts, Rich and I are very excited about the college football game coming back, and I'm sure you've seen some commercials for it. But officially, that is back tomorrow. A 10-year absence, so super excited about that.
Are you going to be first in line? Are you pre-ordering?
Oh, I pre-ordered it. It's already downloaded on the PS5. So we're waiting.
Now, what they need to do, I don't know if they did this, but since they're bringing the college football game back, they need to have like past players in the game. Did
They
they
do.
did they have that? Okay, yeah.
So
So
do you
that's going
remember
to
the
be.
Ultimate? Do you know, like, I don't know how when the last time you've even played a video game is, but do you remember Ultimate Team when they would have like the card, like of a player, and you get to kind of pick them?
Is that more like soccer, or did they have that for all like football, soccer?
That I don't know. I'm pretty sure they have it for all of
Because
them
that
because I
sounds
know
like
like
a FIFA
2K,
thing. I know
2K,
my
2K has it, and I think all of them do it. But I know like MLB The Show, the way they have their format for it was like perfect because you had to earn the cards, but you could also buy them. So it was fun like initially for me to do that, but they just get the cards were just expensive and some of them were super hard to buy. So like you'd spend so much time into the game accruing off, and then all of a sudden like the market skyrockets on a player. But yeah,
yeah.
super excited about that game.
No, that'll be a good one. I had a couple of those back in the day on the
Oh yeah,
GameCube, so I played a few of them. But I know you tomorrow. Once that game it's downloaded, once you got it or whatever, you'll be picking your Trojans with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, and there you
fight
go.
on. Sun does not set. I want everybody to remember this. The sun does not set on the USC Empire.
I'm gonna write that
That
down.
being said, that being said, we are going to put it on a t-shirt. We'll get back on track here. So we hit on football. My other pick on my snake back is the Chicago Blackhawks of gold. Three cups in 6 years, almost unheard of to see that type of run. And in reality, they would have won in 2014. So we'll go back. They won in 2010, they won in 2013, and they won in 2015. well. 2014, they had a chance. They were in the conference Stanley Cup Conference Finals, the Western Conference, and they one bad pass led to new Chicago Blackhawk. Um, he played on the Kings. His name's slipping my mind now, but he scored the game-winning goal to send the Kings to the Stanley Cup, and that would have been a year that the Hawks would have won too, because the Rangers just were not a quality team to go against them. But the Hawks really just were so good since 2010. They had the two kind of hiccups in 2011 and 2012. That was kind of on the back of Stan Bowman. Fuck you. We're up to 4 of those today. He pretty much was a cancer to that team just as long as he was around. Dale Talon was the guy who drafted Taves, drafted all those other guys, and kind of made them who they are. Bowman kind of did a lot of bad trades, so we could have been talking, in that era of multiple championships for the Hawks if they would have been able to re-sign half of those guys. After the 2010 season, you lost Bufflin, you lost Andrew Ladd, Dave Bolin was gone. A couple of those really impactful players were gone. So, you go back and you look and what could have been, but, Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith, Corey Crawford, all those guys are going to end up, well, maybe not Crawford, but all those guys are getting their numbers retired. Those guys are going to be in the banners, at the United Center, and just, I'd say, statues outside of the United Center too.
Give them all a statue.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
Absolutely. And then another guy like Patrick Kane, you can't say enough good things about him. He, won the MVP in a couple of those years. I think it was 2016. That's when they brought in Panarin. He ended up winning the MVP. Another year that they kind of flopped out in the playoffs, and it could have been so much better, but they had to trade away a bunch of other players that were really good. Teuvo Teravainen, he's back now. Bickle he just fell off. He was a cap casualty. Because the hockey is pretty unique in the sense that their salary cap, they have a ceiling and a floor. So you have to have enough money on the floor to compete. So you can't have the Oakland Athletics of the hockey team. Granted, that is kind of the now Utah hockey club because they moved out of Phoenix. So there's no more Phoenix Coyotes if you saw that. You don't see those type of teams. But, getting back to the Hawks, Stanley Cups, it's tough to win them. It's tough to win 3 in 5 years. It was a 6-year season that they did it in. But you could argue that's one of the greatest hockey teams ever. 2013 was probably my favorite if you had to really ask me, just because the team was so good. And that was actually a shortened season too, because of the strike, if you remember the strikes back then too.
You know what? I think the strikes are eluding me right now, but
it was a strike in hockey, and I think there was one in football at the same time, because we were talking to at that point it was just crazy because there was there was close to no sports going to be on, and then they kind of came back.
Well, it's a good thing they did.
Yep. All right, hit me with your next pick. Next 2.
My next dose. Well, this one might upset some Chicagoans. So sorry, but gotta go with the Packers. Gotta go with the Packers on this one. The Bears. Bears are great. They had all their NFC championships. But Packers.
I'm really perplexed. I'm waiting. I'm waiting to hear what you have to say about this.
Well, just all you have to do is wait. 13 championships. Got the most wins in NFL history. Got 4 more than our Bears. My Bears, I should say, not your Bears.
No.
Only team to win 3 straight titles. They did it twice, from 29 to 31, and then from 65 to 67. Since the league was implemented, the playoff system in 33, played in NFL's deciding game 13 times, 10 NFL title appearances from 36 to 67, 3 Super Bowls after 1970 merger. 6 numbers retired, all in the Hall of Fame. You start looking at The NFL. You could say, if I'm not mistaken, because I mean we did these a little differently. I looked more like the entire history of the franchise. You've got
Yeah.
a couple that are more, you know, 8, 10, 12, 15 years. You could say the Terry Bradshaw Pittsburgh Steelers. Didn't they win like four in a row, or they won like two and then another two?
Yeah,
Um,
we could save them for our honorable mentions
that's an
later.
honorable mention. That's where I'm
Yeah.
throwing that in there.
Well,
But
yeah, I'll
you've
let you
got
do the little teaser with it, but
you
yeah.
could say that. I mean, hey, you know what? You could even say, TB12 and his run with the Patriots. Of course, you
Ah,
could say that.
you're killing me here.
Am I killing you?
Yeah, you're
Okay,
supposed to
well,
give me this stuff about the Packers here, man. Come on
well,
now.
you know what? I gave you my stuff on the Packers. You can talk about your other buddy.
I'll talk about your Packers here too. Here, you could say that they had a dynasty of quarterbacks. That's what I'll give you because a lot of those championships that you mentioned, yes, they're important. Yes, they're going to be thrown in our Chicagoan faces, but um, the quarterbacks have been like because all that was before the Super Bowl era. That being said, you could argue that they had the greatest trio with Jordan Love now of quarterbacks. You know, they go 14 years plus of just quarterback after quarterback. You have Brett Favre, you have Aaron Rodgers, and then now you enter in Jordan Love, who looks like he might be one of the best ones of them all. Um, you know, he's doing a lot with these wide receivers. He's making all of them look really good. And yeah, they did win. They won in 2010 with Rodgers. They won that Super Bowl, and they did win in 97 or 98, maybe 99. I don't remember. It was late 90s with, Favre. So, they do. Do you happen to know the record for the Bears against the Packers recently?
I think the Packers didn't they overtake us in the head-to-head matchup? I think we were winning in that. I don't even. They've been showing that I think the last couple of years, and I try to not look at that because we've just been so bad the last. I don't know. I mean, ever really since '85, obviously, but
The last time the
no.
Bears beat the Packers was in 2018.
Oh yeah.
And then
Well,
before that,
obviously Rogers killed us for all those years.
it was 2015, 2013,
My God.
2010. But then they lost the important one in the NFC Championship. Um, you know, they had a nice little streak, when they had the Urlacher Briggs times too, but we're not talking about the Bears. But yeah, kind of the Packers are kind of the daddies of the Bears, the best
It's
way to put it.
unfortunate. It's unfortunate. You start looking at the best teams in the NFL, and they have to stack up there. I mean, so I got them, and then as far as my last one, I had a sort of a split tie with the Lakers and the Celtics. I couldn't really pick one. Obviously, Boston just. I think what was they I think they were both at 17 championships, and now Boston has 18, so they got one more than the Lakers. But it's when you talk about the NBA as a sport, it's those two, and then pretty much everybody else. You've got a couple other franchises that have won a few. Obviously, the Spurs have won a few, the Bulls have won a few, but then there's a lot of teams that have got like one or whatever. It really is. You talk about the pride of the league. It's those two. They've got some of the best players that have ever played the game. Bill Russell, Kareem, um, Magic, Bird. The list goes on and on. Those are just obviously the couple big ones, as everybody knows. But um, I think when I looked up, it said the Lakers had 31 members in the Hall of Fame, and Boston had, I believe, 40 players and coaches. So you you just it's unbelievable when you start looking at, like I said, with the best of the best in all these different sports and just how good some of these are. And then you look at like modern day today, and both franchises are kind of at very different levels. Boston looks like they could be the team to beat in the East for another couple of years. I know the East is kind of getting a little bit better, and then you got the Lakers, who obviously are in the West, and I mean, what are they doing? They're in such a turmoil that they just took LeBron's kid, who frankly I don't know if he's much better than you and I in a pickup game. So you
No, I
know,
think his last game he had 8 points.
and well, I think they were showing the kid that he was guarding or whatever, and that kid. put up at least 20 or 30s in one of those games recently. So, I
Right.
mean, we'll see. But yeah, those two. I mean, you start talking about the best of the best, and I mean the players that have come through there, the championships they've won, is unparalleled to really anybody else in the league.
Yep. Yeah, nailed it with those. My last pick is kind of a spoiled one already, though, but we're going to go with the GOAT. We're going with Tom Brady. Those New England Patriot teams from 2001 to 2019, 6 Super Bowls in that era. It was we could go back and look and you see different teams, the Dallas Cowboys, the 49ers. And basically, a lot of those teams, were great in those eras, but then you talk about almost 2 decades of teams just winning Super Bowls and not just winning them, but being in the Super Bowl in a
Mm-hmm.
number of years consecutively. And it, if you had to pick one, who do you think was more crucial to that team? Do you think it was Brady or do you think it was Belichick?
The Brady Belichick. To All right, to make a long story short, I guess I'd probably have to side with the player, but
I mean, he was the reason that I think he was the reason they won. A lot of people say it was the defense as well. You still need a good quarterback to do it. But that being said, the Patriots won or were in the Super Bowl. So they won in 2001, 2003, 2004. They went back to back in those years. They lost the Super Bowl in 2007 to Eli. They were undefeated in that season. You go to the Super Bowl in 2011 and you lose to Eli again. You were 13-3 that year. You make it to the Super Bowl and you win in 2014. Won the Super Bowl in 2016. That's when they really pissed Brady off. They made it back to the Super Bowl in 2017, but lost to the Eagles. Won back again in 2018, and then that was it. So you go back and you just look at these teams, and after 2019 Brady left and he ended up being going to Tampa. So Tampa Tom won in 2020, with the Bucks. So one of those just great dynasties, whether it was the defense that carried them, whether it was the Gronkowskis, the Edelmans, the Wes Welkers, it was just an insane run that those teams went on, and I don't think it's anything we'll see in this. Well, let me phrase that. I think this is something that we are going to see in a shorter time span, and I'm going to be talking about my honorable mention right now because it was hard to put him on there quite yet. But you have to give his flowers to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs with this run that they've been on in 2019, 2021, and going or 2022, and then winning again in 2023. Uh, you know, the Chiefs are one of those teams that are really going to be a team to beat, and they actually got better. Last year's team, in my opinion, was one of the weaker teams, but their defense stepped up, and Travis Kelsey's still there, Patrick Mahomes is still there, Andy Reid's still there. They just brought in this year. They brought in Hollywood Brown. They drafted Xavier Worthy out of Texas. So,
yeah,
some really, really tough teams in there. For my just the mention, but some of the other honorable mentions, I'm not going to go through too deep of stats for them. But for football, I did make sure I put the Dallas Cowboys in the '90s. They won 3, Super Bowls then, and then you have to go with your '80s, 49ers. They had 4, they won in 81, 84, 88, 89 with Joe Montana. And then they won a little bit later too with Steve Young, but like Jerry Rice was on those teams. So this is coming back to one thing: having a elite quarterback will win you those, championships. And then for hockey, I had a couple of them. Detroit Red Wings from '97 to 2002. The New York Islanders in the '70s and early '80s. Montreal Canadiens also '75 through '79. And then recently, you have to give the Tampa Bay Lightning their flowers as well. They won back-to-back Stanley Cups in 2020, 2021. And then they made it back in 22, but lost in Game 6. But they also made it in 2015, lost to our Chicago Blackhawks. And obviously for basketball, you can just run through it with San Antonio Spurs. We talked about them. They had 5 championships, late 90s into the 2000s, early 2000s, that is. And then, they won in 2014 as well. And then the modern day one that could be ending, this could be a discussion for, another pod, but Golden State Warriors too, winning in 15, 17, 18, and 22. So hell of a run that these teams have been on. So really tough to really pick them. Did I miss anybody off of those lists that you might have been thinking?
Um, well, it's off the top of my head, not that I can think of, but we're probably missing someone or two. But
I got one. San Francisco Giants, 2010 through 2014.
oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yep, 3-5 or whatever.
Yep. Which again, once again, that's kind of unheard of, especially now too.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to win multiple times in a couple years in any sport, and then to do it in baseball, yeah, that's pretty wild. It's a
Yeah,
dynasty.
it
It
is a
was.
dynasty. Well, getting back on track because obviously we're touching on some fantasy football. We're probably going to do a part one and a part two for this because running backs are the topic of discussion for this one. So we'll do about half for time purposes, and then we'll get into the next half, the next show. But let's lead it off with our sleeper picks here for running backs. And mind you, a sleeper is just someone that might go in a little bit later of a round, and they might be someone that breaks out. I have a couple guys on my list here, so it's kind of difficult to really pinpoint them. But one of my main ones is Jerome Ford for the Cleveland Browns. Reason he's on my list, he came in last season, and through weeks 3 through 17, after Nick Chubb, the starter, went down, he was the RB20. He averaged about 15 touches and 67 yards a game, ranked 11th in total targets for running backs. That's what you want in fantasy. If you look at some of these top teams in fantasy, they have these running backs that catch the ball. More points when you play in a PPR league, obviously. And right now, he's a clear number one for the Browns. They brought in Deontay Foreman. So, we'll see what happens with him. But as of right now, the volume will be king.
That's a great pick because I remember when Chubb went down, and I was like, "Oh man, should I take a flyer on this guy?" And I tried to, couldn't get him, and then whoever picked him up, his first couple weeks, I mean, he was great. He was putting out 20 or more, it seemed like, and it was like, okay, well, this was probably one of the big guys to scoop up this year, so missed out on that. But yeah, that's a good pick too. And then what'd you say with Chubb? Is he?
He's recovering. He'll be back. They don't have a time yet because obviously he had a really horrific injury
Right.
to his knee again. That guy's torn more ACLs
Yeah.
than we all have ACLs. But that being said, we'll see when he comes back and see what it is. I don't expect Jerome Ford to be a long-term dynasty asset, but for this current year, I think
Yeah.
he's your perfect pick right now because of the value. And you can get him late in startups. He's not going to be a guy that goes in the first 10 rounds usually. So that's my guy.
Okay. Well, my first guy or two, I don't know if these are going to be as big as sleepers, but
That's okay.
um, I you have to like that. I don't know if it's his last name's Spears, the kid on
Tajay.
Tennessee. Yes. Okay. That how do you say it?
Tajay Spears.
I don't know if it was Tajay or TJ.
That's Tajay.
Okay. Spears. King Henry's finally out. They brought Pollard in, but we don't know exactly, the extent of Pollard's role. Pollard's a solid back, but this Spears kid, they're obviously high on him to let Henry go. And I know Henry's a little bit older, but um, this kid looks like he's going to be pretty good. And like I said, you could take Pollard, but I think Spears is looking like he might end up. I mean, I'm assuming they're thinking he's going to end up being the number one guy over there at some point this year, if not right out of the gate. So you probably have to get him before the 10th round, right? You
Yeah.
mentioned Jerome Ford. Maybe he's a little bit more of a sleeper, but as far as an RB1 ish goes, I would assume he's going to be in that conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could. The best comparison for Tajay is that it might be a 50-50 split with Pollard, but Pollard really wasn't overly efficient with the
Yeah.
Cowboys last year. Where Spears, when he had a couple games out there, he looked really good. So he's really quick. He had the fifth, or he was ranking fifth in the explosive rate, which is like 14, and he was 14th in yards after contact per attempt. So he's really efficient. So if he can actually end up, either Pollard has an injury or, if he doesn't play up to that caliber, I don't think that the Tennessee is going to be, waiting too long to use him. So we could really see him end up really breaking out, and he could end up being a 3 down back just because of his, efficiency. But, we'll see. That is a great sleeper pick, actually. I did have him on one of my lists, too.
I had him more as like sleeper slash breakout too, because I think this could definitely be the year. Just like you said with Pollard last year, he really wasn't that great last year. So I would assume Tennessee's ready to just give him the keys and say, just start running, young man.
Yep, absolutely. Another one that I do have on my sleeper list is Jaleel McLaughlin from Denver.
Okay.
So everyone might be thinking, "Oh, Javante Williams finally getting his playing time." He was drafted pretty highly a couple years ago, tore his ACL last year. He was healthy, he was coming back, but never really was efficient, never really got going. And as we've seen with, Sean Payton, he's not afraid just to, boot out, um, you know, boot out a running back. So that being said, it could be Jaleel McLaughlin's backfield to start. I mean, they're talking about maybe even cutting Javante. So that's going to be a very popular pick. You're going to see these all summer long with, once training camp starts and, these guys aren't even in pads yet. And you're going to see Jaleel McLaughlin being, really sought after just because he was pretty efficient when he was out there and he can catch the ball. So we know that, Sean Payton likes using those backs like that.
That's another solid pick. I remember I think he had a couple of decent weeks last year when they still had a couple of those guys with the other running backs over there. So that's a solid pick. I went with another guy, at least I was looking up, was Zamir White. I know that I saw Josh Jacobs is out. I think they brought Madison in, Alexander
Yeah,
Madison, and
which
they might have Amir Abdullah, but I think he's more of a pass catcher anyways, and Madison's not going to do a whole lot. So another guy you'd assume is probably going to get the bulk of the workload. And another guy who I think could have a nice little breakout season.
Yeah, I think based off of volume alone, he'll be a solid running back because last year we saw it when he was on the field. They used him, and with having not, they don't really have a quarterback. I think their quarterback's Gardner Minshew. So when you break it down, they're going to run the ball. They still have Tay Adams out there as well, but from weeks 15 through 18, he averaged about 23.3 touches, which led him to have 114 total yards. So that was RB12. That could win you a week. That could win you a season if
Yeah.
when it comes down to it. So he did come out of Georgia, so those Georgia running backs are good. And have you seen a picture of him recently? There, you might
I
as well
have
start
not.
calling biceps white because he's just yoked. So
Biceps White.
Bob's biceps white. But yeah, I think it's just going to be a volume. That's a really good sleeper because he was on one of my lists too. But just based off volume alone, he's going to be a really solid option for them. Moving into our breakout list real quick. Um, One of my breakouts is Kendre Miller from New Orleans. We don't know what's going to happen with Kamara. Kendry Miller has all the talent in the world. If you ever watch any of his tape at TCU, he was on that championship run team that they lost, obviously, to Georgia. But he was super efficient, super quick. One of those guys that you could just kind of rely on to, be pretty solid. But like I said, the only thing blocking him right now is Kamara, but he could be a goal line back. But that all depends on Jamal Williams being there too. So we'll see what happens with Kendre Miller. But I think he's going to be one of those picks that people you're once again going to see it all over all those fantasy sites, talking highly of Kendre Miller, just because he was limited last year. He was a rookie last year. He only played 8 games. He only had like a 30% snap mark, so really wasn't super. Um, wasn't really out there very much, but he did have an impressive per touch number when he had the opportunity. He had a really good missed tackle rate, around 24%. So, he could be another Alvin Kamara for all we know. But I would assume he starts, eating in on Kamara's, you know, touches going forward.
Like the pick a lot. The last guy I had on my list was more of he might be the most sleeper worthy guy on this list, as was Gus Edwards. The reason I got
Yes.
Gus the Bus on here is I think they said last year he led all backs with 19 carries inside opponent's 5 yard line, and he ended up getting 13 touchdowns out of that. So if you're looking for a guy that, and I believe he's on San Diego now with Harbaugh, and they just let Eckler go. He's over there with Washington. So um, that seems to be, and then of course they drafted your buddy Joe Alt, who is one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen. So
It's amazing.
there's not a chair alive that's big enough for that guy. But
I Yeah.
you know what? If they do that again, I don't know how the rest of the O line is for the Chargers, but if they do that again where they can get within the 5 yard line and they can give Gus the Bus about 20 carries or more in within 5 yards, I think they have him listed at almost 240, Gus.
Yeah.
So
He's got a bowling ball.
he is Gus the Bus. You mean good luck having one guy try to take him down. So if you're looking for a guy who might not get a ton of carries, he's not going to get the volume the other two guys I had on here are going to get, but he's going to get those goal line touches, and those are always important. And he's gonna, if he stays healthy and he gets enough of those goal line touches, he's going to have a week or two where he scores twice and he gets a couple other carries and gives you 15 to 20 potentially. So another guy who you could probably get a little bit later in the rounds.
Yeah, if you run the zero RB strategy, absolutely. Now, playing devil's advocate, they did bring in J.K. Dobbins as well. He also was a Baltimore Raven.
Yeah, Jesus.
I don't want to put him on any list because he's burned us for like the last 5 years of putting him on a list of being like, hey, he's finally going to be the guy. He's finally going to do it. Never ends up doing it. When I look at it, he has a chance, like you said, if Gus is healthy, but he struggles to stay on the field. So does Dobbins.
Yeah.
If one of them does stay healthy, that's going to be an elite running back room. If given the opportunity, whoever takes it could do it. But
Mhm.
they spent a day 3 pick on Kamani Vidal. I don't know if you've seen anything about him. Not really a high end running back, but that's another third stringer that they grabbed who could also be pretty efficient for fantasy. So that backfield could be, you know, it could be either really good for everybody or it could be split down the middle, and we're seeing 3 different guys score touchdowns in a game. But the good thing is they do have Harbaugh there, and they also have Justin Herbert.
Right, and then I think they just drafted. Didn't they just take a receiver in
Yeah,
the
Lad
in?
McConkey.
That's right. So we'll see how he does this year. He's supposed to be decent. So yeah, we shall see.
Yep, volume will be a key there.
Yeah.
Vidal actually is one of my deep sleepers. So, next week's show, we'll go a little bit deeper into it just for time purposes. We'll cut it off at the sleepers, and did mention a breakout at here, in this list. But, that's fantasy for you. As there's so much, especially at this position with running backs. You kind of just know that you need to really find value where it's needed, especially in redraft. Like a lot of people will, take the hero RB approach, which is taking your CMCs, coming back around and getting the next best available. It works if they all stay healthy, but knowing that position, knowing how much they get hit,
Yeah.
it's a very tough strategy to kind of build around. That's why, they do have the strategy of zero RBs. So you get a lot of those guys that we just mentioned on that list, and you build your team around Justin Jefferson, Travis Kelsey, a lot of those, stud players that, could get banged up, but they're going to put up, 20 to 30 points for you.
And if you're doing PPR league and if you've got, really good top tier receivers like you just mentioned with JJ and Kelsey, you're getting the points for the catches, and those guys are pretty much catching a touchdown or more every week. So yeah, that'll from that strategy, from that standpoint, that can definitely add up.
Yep, absolutely. So I think we'll cut it off here. We got House of the Dragons tonight, and All Star game is what, Tuesday. We have Home Run Derby, which is a new format this year. So new format, but like kind of same, kind of the same, but should be a little bit more exciting. I do miss the days. We might have to do an emergency podcast tomorrow if you're
Hmm.
available, just to talk about the history of the home run derby. It won't be super long, but I really want to dig deep into the history and what it used to be, what it is now, and some of those guys that we used to see with Sammy Sosa, McGuire, uh, Bobby Abreu. You know,
I think Prince Fielder might have done it a few
oh
years
yeah,
back in the day when he was playing. When you got those big guys going up there hitting them, I mean, it's something different.
yeah. So stay tuned. For that, we'll give you a little teaser. But yeah, that's pretty much the big sports of the week is going to be for the All Star game, and a little break from fantasy baseball this week coming up. You get half the week to kind of just relax and play some college football.
There you go. Yeah, I should pre-order that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, my friend. As they say, I think you'll like us.
Burn them all.